Recording in progress. So let's start today with a few minutes of intentional breathing. And you may have questions about that, or thoughts about that, or judgments about that, or opinions about that, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just go along with whatever is said. But let's just take a few minutes and we'll just breathe intentionally. So if you are comfortable sitting, then please do so. And if you're uncomfortable sitting, then don't. If you're comfortable sitting away from a backrest so that you're not leaning back into something, but rather you're actually sitting on your own structure, supported by your own inner structure, then that will give the best results. And when I say results, I mean it's an awareness exercise, but in order to cultivate that awareness, you want to be as aligned to your own structure as possible. So if it's possible, then you'll just sit away from a backrest, and we'll just take a few moments to breathe, and I'll just guide that. So you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. If you're comfortable with the eyes closed, then it's nice to do with the eyes closed because it allows you to really direct your attention to the felt experience, and you'll notice, most likely, you'll notice more subtlety this way. So if you're comfortable doing so, close the eyes, and if not, then you needn't. So really here I'm providing some suggestions, but the main thing is that you are reasonably comfortable. You shouldn't be straining, and you shouldn't be, well, we'll just say straining. So you needn't be straining physically or mentally or emotionally. Just we want to allow ourselves to be as aligned and supported and just present and restful as possible. And then just become aware of the breath. You are breathing, or there is a breath, even if it's presently, maybe you find presently you're holding it. But whatever you discover, just tune into that, and then just start to relax the breath. So you don't need to try and force anything. You shouldn't force anything. Just start to reduce the amount of unnecessary effort. So notice where there's a squeezing or where there's a strain, and just begin to gently, slowly lessen that unnecessary effort so that you can just be aware of the gentle, natural breath that is there underneath all of the layers of strain and habitual effort. So you can be aware that conceptually we can understand the breath to have 4 parts. Of course, there's just one continuous breath, but conceptually we can look at it in terms of there's an exhalation, then there's a transition between exhalation and inhalation, then there's an inhalation, and then there's a transition between inhalation and exhalation. So this cycle continues over and over and over and over and over until the body dies. Of course, we may occasionally inject pauses at various places. But apart from that, this cycle is unbroken, just continues from the first breath to the last. So now we're just noticing that, and then allowing that to be as natural and free and pleasurable as possible by being aware of the unnecessary strain. So just notice where, for example, in the exhalation, let's just take a moment just to notice the exhalation in particular. So of course the other phases of the breath will be there, but on each exhalation, for the next few exhalations, just be aware. Are you pushing the breath out? Are you forcing the breath out? Is there a squeezing going on at any point? Is there any kind of strain involved? Is your face tense? Is your chest collapsed? Is your abdomen tight? Are your shoulders doing anything? Just be aware. And through that awareness, just start to explore the possibility of doing less on the exhalation, so that the exhalation becomes a relaxed, natural, non-strained event. And be very gentle in this process. So it's not about trying to achieve perfection. That would be counterproductive here, actually. So there's no actual perfect breath that you can precognize and then achieve. Rather, you can just be attuned to the spontaneous, natural breath, including all of the judgments of imperfection. That's all part of it. It's all part of the same process of tuning in and being aware. So as long as you're just present and attentive and doing your best, then you are doing it exactly correctly, whatever your experience seems to be. So a few more exhalations that we're going to focus on, and just see that you can allow the exhalation to become increasingly relaxed and non-strenuous. And be aware of the whole somatic self, the face, the tongue, the chest, the lower back, the hands. Just see, is there anything that's still squeezing or forcing or straining? And just allow that to relax. And then you notice also most likely how that changes the shape and maybe the rhythm and the feel of the breath. So just notice that for a moment. And notice what your reaction to that is. Do you like it? Do you feel uncomfortable about it? Do you have any concern? Does it provoke any kind of imagery or thought or anything at all? And just notice that without any need to judge whether that's good or bad or right or wrong. Just observe that. And then on the next few breaths, let's also start to notice the inhalation. So on the inhalation now, can you also start to allow that to be as non-strenuous as possible? So the inhalation is in all but very extreme breathing patterns. It is going to be an active process. So there's going to be some muscular engagement, but just see how how much is really necessary? What can you relax? What can you let go of? What can you surrender? So just be aware on the inhalations of what you can surrender there, so that both the inhalation and the exhalation starts to become more relaxed, more free, less strenuous. And notice that you can't think your way there, but you can just be present to the actual experience. Just noticing where the habit of strain is. And in this very moment, perfectly tuned into that, exploring this possibility of surrender, this possibility of allowing for something totally spontaneous and fresh and alive to occur. So be aware of where there might be habits of restriction in the abdomen or in the chest or in the throat, maybe in the shoulders. And just through that awareness, begin to explore surrendering that unnecessary effort, so that you start to really feel that the breath is becoming gentler, more satisfying without so much effort. And then we'll just take a few more breaths and notice now, as you're just relaxing into the breath, what is presenting itself, and notice who you are in all of this. So you might have overlooked that when you were very absorbed in this observation of the breath, but it's very curious to notice, are you doing the breath, or is the breath happening? Is it happening to you, or is it simply happening? What is the means by which you can know that the breath is happening? Is that a means that you do, or is that a means that you're aware of? What's your relationship with that? It's just an interesting observation. Just notice. So now you're free to continue to keep the eyes closed. If you have the eyes closed, you can continue to observe the breath if you'd like, or you can do whatever you wish. And we'll now explore our direct experience with this as a kind of a starting point. So an important thing is that in one of the benefits of doing the a practical exercise like this is that it gives us, starts to tune us into the direct experience, and then we start to notice the openness and the richness and the aliveness of this present experience. And maybe it starts to open us to seeing in a new way and realizing that the totality of this aliveness is infinite and thereby vastly greater than the very narrow, limited conceptual framework that we've been functioning from, in which we perceived that there was a problem and we needed to solve the problem, and that problem was our lives. And we were operating in time, always against the clock, so to speak, because we know time is running out and we haven't gotten to our goal, we haven't fixed all the problems, and all seems so dire and terrible and hopeless. But here, as we just tune into this direct experience, what starts to happen is we have this opening of perception, this expansion of perception, and a dissolving of those notions, at least temporarily. Of course, they come back, maybe not. I mean, never know, but usually they come back in some fashion. But at least for this moment, we can just notice this openness. So now what happens, and I'll point this out so that you can look and see if maybe you notice this. And again, this is all, it has to be experiential. It's not about just intellectual, conceptual, so-called knowledge, because that does us no good. But here it has to be experiential, which is why offered this guided practice to ease into this direct experience. So it's you notice it's unmediated by thought. No, thought may arise, of course. But you notice, for example, just to notice the exhalation. So just notice the next exhalation and just observe that exhalation from the start all the way to the finish. And then if you really want to augment that and become more absorbed in that, then you just can also start to notice, as I was pointing out earlier, can you allow for that to be relaxed, non-forced, non-strenuous? So you're really having to tune in now. You're having to be aware of the cycle of the breath. You're having to be aware of the sensations. So you just notice that, and notice that in this observation, there's no room for any kind of conceptual overlay, because it's too immediate, it's too intimate. It's not something that you can step outside of and then have some kind of thought or conceptual overlay regarding. It's perfectly intimate. It's right here, right now. And it's, as far as you can determine, it is your own self. I mean, there's nothing apart from you here in this direct experience. So hopefully you can see how simple and easy that is. Of course, as soon as I use the words like simple and easy, then there's a good chance the mind is triggered and the mind says, wait a second, is it really simple and easy? Let me think about that. But that's okay. You just notice that that happens, if it happens. And so here, as we're observing this directness, this perfect intimacy of the direct experience, now you'll see that everything is arising here. So no, we don't have to get rid of anything. This isn't about producing a state and maintaining that state. So, of course, through the observation of the breath, it's very likely that a state will be produced. Very likely, in fact, almost certain, because the breath is so intimately connected with the mind that as the breath slows down through observation, as the breath becomes gentler through observation, as there's less strain involved in the breath, so too the mind becomes more relaxed, more open. And so all states are, we could say, states of mind. So as there's a change in the state of the breath, there's a change in the state of the mind, there's a change in state. And we say, oh, this is a more desirable state, perhaps. You may not agree. Of course, individually, some of you may have, there's a possibility you may judge the state as undesirable. But for the majority of people, actually, it's most likely that you will judge the experience as more desirable than usual, because it will be calmer, it will be clearer, less cluttered, less strenuous. But that state will come and go. So we can certainly use techniques, we can cultivate yogic techniques and so forth to learn how to manage that state, and then we can sustain a nicer state for longer periods of time, and we can cultivate that, and that's all fine. It's all good, maybe. But we have to be clear about what it is that we really want. And we don't act, although we may think superficially initially that what we want is a better state. Actually, what you will find, and many of you have found this through repeated exploration, is that actually no state will really satisfy you, no matter how good it is and no matter how long it is sustained. So, of course, this doesn't mean that we must then actively seek to get rid of nice states, or that we should deny ourselves nice states. But as we are just observing, we can notice that there is a clinging, straining, this compulsive efforting going on to seek for better, more, to hold on to what is considered desirable, to get rid of what's considered undesirable. And to see that that actually is quite unpleasant in and of itself. So just observe that, just observe. And this is where we often start when we look at, the intentions, or intention, which we'll do now today. So you can just see, why are you here? Why take time for this? And that's not to suggest that you shouldn't, but rather just to look sincerely for yourself. Why am I making time for this? What is it that I'm hoping for? Because surely there's a hope for something. There's an intention for something. This is the nature of this phenomenal world. This waking state is that it's transactional. So we are looking to get something. If we do something, we want to get something. We're motivated to take action because we want an outcome of that action. So here we are, we choose to be here to do this. And now we want to be really honest with ourselves about, well, what is the motivation here? This isn't to be cynical or to condemn ourselves or judge ourselves. Rather, it's just to see Actually, it's not even judgmental. This isn't about having a judgment and saying, is it a good intention or a bad intention? It's just about seeing truthfully. So just look, and you might notice that to really see truthfully, to really tell the truth, can be uncomfortable, because what it reveals is all the underlying judgments, expectations, unfulfilled desires, fears, all the stuff that we kind of keep under the rug, so to speak. But when we really look sincerely in this pristine moment right now, just in this total innocence, if we just look sincerely at what am I hoping for, we'll see, well, I'm hoping that I can feel better. And I'm hoping very innocently that I'll be able to sustain that forever and ever. So then just see that, or whatever you see. So just see whatever you can see sincerely for yourself. And then just notice that along with that, as I've pointed out, is all this other stuff that we kind of don't want to look at because it's so uncomfortable, but just allow yourself to see it. Just allow it to kind of bubble up, and you'll see the anxieties, the fears, the guilt, the shame, the despair, whatever it is that's there. All the judgment, for sure. A lot of judgment, judgment of self, judgment of other. And just notice that actually right now, if you allow it, you can just be aware without having to react to any of it. So normally when we see these things, we flinch, we try to distract ourselves, we start thinking about it. But in this moment, if you just allow yourself, you can just be present to it without needing to take any action whatsoever in regard to it. Just be a witness to it. And it's just in the same way that you were observing the breath in this very gentle, open way, the same way you can just notice where the unnecessary effort and strain creeps in regard to your own experience. So when there's an impulse that you would consider judgment or self-condemnation or self-criticism or fear or anxiety or worry or anger or any of the rest, whatever it is, just notice how there may be this compulsive, reactive efforting that starts to be activated, and that you can just be aware and just surrender. So you're not trying to get rid of it. You're not trying to do anything with it. You're just not making that effort for this moment. You just open so innocently, just very gently. And if you find that difficult at any point, you can just return to the breath awareness exploration, which is a very supportive kind of inquiry. So you have a kind of fallback that you can rely on if needed. So that you just allow yourself just to remain very gentle with yourself and very open, and just observing your own direct experience. So now I'll just point out some things that might happen because this process that it's very, very simple. You see, remember I said it's very simple. It's profoundly simple, and uh, it's extraordinarily healing. But of course, the conditioning interferes with that usually, because we believe automatically, almost, we believe so many of these judgments, and we're thinking and reacting and striving. So let's point out some of those so that you can be aware of them. So one thing that can happen is this uh, belief that might go something like, what good is this? Or this doesn't seem to be working, or this isn't doing anything. How is this going to help me? And so I would say that's a very common, maybe the most common, maybe really just sort of the only one, but you can just notice that if that is happening for you, just notice that when that arises. And you can just call that into question, not in a confrontational way. You don't want to fight with it, but just to ask in a sincere way, what is what is this going to do for me if I follow this? So this comes back to that, what is my intention? And you really look at it in this light of this innocent kind of inquiry, and you'll see that this objection that arises, or this belief, is actually quite violent. It's just this sort of violent reaction. And its only aim is to express that violence. And then look and see, and you can see just in your own, through your own memories, in your own life, how that has played out, how it has, all of this violent reactivity, this violent reaction that stems from the sense that just to be myself, just to be, is not enough. That I have to be someone, that I have to do something, that I have to fix myself, that I have to be good, that I have to achieve something valuable, that I need to impress others, that I cannot be perceived as bad or wrong by others, that I should not allow others to have negative judgments of me, that I need to defend myself against these judgments of others, opinions of others, on and on and on. You see how all of these arise from the same kind of core violent reactivity, which in the moment when we are reacting, we don't question enough. And so we just kind of vaguely assume this is necessary, that it has some sort of positive aim. But you can look right now in the light of this pure, pristine stillness of yourself that hopefully is apparent to you, in this moment, and just out of this stillness, this innocence, just you can just sincerely look and ask, what will this reactivity achieve? What is its aim? What is intended here? What is hoped for? And you'll see it's actually empty. That its only aim is this expression of violence now. And then see in your own life how this is manifest so many times, and see what the outcome has been for yourself and for others. And it shouldn't be hard to see, because if you're sincere, you'll have dozens of examples just in the past day that you can look to and see what the outcome has been, and you'll see it's only been painful. And all it does is it feeds into this vicious cycle of self-judgment, self-hatred, self-condemnation, anger, and it's more reactivity, more violence, because you can't get it right. You can't get it. You can't make yourself good enough, perfect enough, righteous enough, successful enough, invulnerable. You can't achieve any of these aims. And so these reactive, violent tendencies continue. And it's just continuing on its own momentum. And it seems urgent, seems like I must do something. I must make myself better. I must make myself good enough. I must show them. I must achieve success. I must. But just notice how much, just as we were doing with the breath, as you're just observing your own direct experience now, notice all those impulses to do something, to think about something, to figure something out, to achieve something, to get somewhere, to fix something, to understand something, to whatever. Notice all of those impulses and just see that it's just this sort of churning, stormy mess that will never achieve anything or go anywhere. It's just spewing venom. And notice that it requires you to continue to indulge these tendencies. And it provokes that through the sense of discomfort, urgency, fear. So there's a sense that I have to. It's not even, there's no possibility of anything else because the discomfort is so extreme. And just see underneath that. And this, depending, this may surprise you or it may not surprise you. It depends. Maybe you already know the punchline here. But just look underneath all of that. And now, of course, if you're underneath is not to be taken literal. It's just a pointing, so you could understand it differently. Maybe your way of understanding it is different than to say underneath. Maybe it's closer in, maybe it's before. Maybe it's just to say, notice what's aware. Or notice the space in which all of this is occurring. Now, I want to just say that there are various experiences that may be had here. So, and all of them are fine. And I just want to point them out so that you can know that your experience is okay and that you don't have to strive for some other experience necessarily, unless you want to. So, depending on so many variables, you may, and it's more, I would say, it's more likely if you've done more inquiry or certain types of meditation. This is more likely that you will notice that you can just be aware of this stillness, this presence that you are, that is your own true self, that is before thought, that is before perception, that is before everything, that is the very the substance of all reality, and that you are that. And this just becomes enlivened and clear as you just rest and observe. So you may notice this. You may have a kind of almost a palpable experience of this stillness and silence that is not, you can't think about it. I mean, you could try to think about it. It doesn't interfere with it to think about it, but you can't grasp it with thought. So thinking is fine. It's not a problem, but just rather to say that you may, if you really are observing and able to notice this, then you see thought is not needed here. Thought is totally not up to the task and really just is unnecessary because I already am this. So you may, that's one possibility. You may have this experience in which you just have this felt sense, this direct perception, this knowing of this vast stillness and silence. Now, of course, the moment I say that, for those who don't have that experience, and this is why I'm pointing it out, you may say, oh, well, I'm not having the right experience, or how do I get that experience? And that's why I want to make it clear that you don't need to have that experience. That experience may come, and if it does, that's fine. It can be nice, but don't think that you must have that experience. It's just that's just it's just another phenomenon. It's just another experience, and all experiences come and go. They can't be sustained forever. So another possibility is you may, when you're really just observing, as I'm pointing out, if you're not able to really, for whatever reason, if your nervous system isn't able to process that, then you may just experience it as a kind of blankness, or like almost like you zone out, or sleepiness, or something like that. And so that's perfectly fine. So if you have that experience, that's totally fine. Now you might say, well, I don't seem to be having either of those experiences. Maybe you say, I feel very agitated. My experience is very agitated. I'm just thinking a lot and worrying a lot and straining a lot. Okay, that's fine too. How could that be fine? This, maybe this raises some suspicion. So wait a second, how could that be? Well, it's because actually, and I've already said this, it's not about the experience. And that runs so counter to everything that we think we know. But actually, everybody is capable and in truth has had repeated glimpses of what I'm pointing to over the time that we've been looking here together. And for some of you, because there's enough of, again, there's so many variables, but if your nervous system is able to process it, and if you're able to, if it's a repeated experience so that you can recognize it more clearly, then you'll have a certain kind of experience. And if due to other circumstances, you may not recognize the experience consciously, but it's still there because it's the background. It's everything is coming in and out of existence from this stillness, silence that you are. And if you're having an agitated experience, so a lot of the time we think, I'm trying I'll know that I'm getting closer to my goal when I'm having more nicer experiences. It's a very seductive notion, but it leads to a lot of unnecessary suffering, because what will happen is as long as you cling to that notion, because that is your desire, it must manifest sooner or later, whenever that is, eventually. So long as you hold that desire, and so then you will have more of these better experiences according to you. But then what will happen, and I'm telling you this from experience, because everything that goes up must come down. This is the nature of this phenomenal world, that everything goes up and down. Those so-called better experiences will occur, and then there will be a disappearance of those better experiences, and then there will be agitation and or depression, or however you perceive it, something undesirable according to you. And then that can lead to a great deal of suffering, because then there was a sense that I was achieving, I was succeeding, I was finally making it, and now I've failed, and oh my God, how do I fix this? What have I done? And then this whole thing is going again, full steam ahead. What do I do? Oh no. So I'm pointing it out now so that you can be aware of this, and maybe it will help you to avoid the unnecessary suffering. If you can recognize that actually, if what's occurring is what you call agitation or depression or whatever, by whatever name, just see that this is just what has to happen. That just as day follows night and night follows day, the wave rises, the wave falls. So this is in this phenomenal world, you can observe that that's just how it goes. Nothing avoids that. So these experiences that we call bad experiences, undesirable experiences, experiences of agitation. So, for example, you might say, well, it's very desirable to have a still mind. Oh, goodness knows, that's really nice. I mean, very nice. And of course, there are a lot of schools that will teach you, a lot of yogic schools that will teach you that is the goal. Or at the very least, they'll say that's a important stepping stone on the path. Usually they won't say that's the goal in and of itself, but it's a stepping stone. It's a necessary stepping stone on the path. Well, so then if you can achieve this still mind, calm mind, peaceful mind, or a disappearance of the mind, totally still, then when there's a return of the mind and it's loud and agitated, that can seem very, very bad. So better, in my opinion, certainly more direct and less likely to result in unnecessary suffering, is to just learn the lesson sooner rather than later, which is that the nature of this phenomenal world is that there's up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And you, when there's up, you are aware. When there's down, you are aware. When there's loud mind, you are aware. When there's still mind, you are aware. When there's good behavior, so-called, you are aware. When there's bad behavior, so-called, you are aware. When there's striving and grasping, you are aware. When there's non-striving and non-grasping, you are aware. And of course, all of that's in words, so it gives the sense falsely that you are something that is aware. But actually, to be perfectly clear, you are not something that's aware. You are that which is aware. And even that's not accurate, because there's nothing that you just look right now, look to see, who are you? Can you find this thing? And if you're, of course, you turn to thought and you'll get a million answers or more. Maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, I'm this, I'm the body, I'm this personality, I'm these achievements, I'm my legacy, I'm my ancestry, I'm what other people think of me, I'm what I think of me, and on and on and on. But you see, all of that is speculative and insubstantial fundamentally. But if you look closer, more intimately, prior to the thinking, prior to the conceptualization, you can see right now for yourself very clearly that who you are is not something that you can grasp in mind. You can't grasp it with a thought. You can't understand it. You can't figure it out. You can't get hold of it. You can't augment it or diminish it. So what can touch this? We believe wrongly that so many things can touch it, that our actions can touch it, that our thoughts can touch it, that our whatever else, I don't know, so many things that we think can touch who we are. So we think, I have to have a calm mind, I have to have a still mind, I have to have good, positive emotions, I have to have equanimity, I have to be free of desire, and all these things. And as I'm saying, if you look sincerely right now, you can see that who you are can't be touched by any of that. It can't be touched by desire. The desire and the absence of desire are both witnessed by you. You are aware equally, and that awareness remains untouched and unaffected by the presence or absence of desire, the presence or absence of agitation or calm or peace or hostility or any of the rest of that. So there's a process that we could call a process of inquiry or a process of meditation. And we've explored that today. And that process we go kind of step by step. And there is a kind of calming, settling there. But as I've pointed out, that's just a state. That state comes and goes. So see what is prior to the state. See what is transcendent of the state. See what it is that is aware of the state when the state is and when the state is not. See what is aware. See what is aware now, and notice that what is aware now is also aware when there is dreaming and also when there is deep sleep. So this awareness, and that's just a word, but this awareness, notice that it's your own self. So you are that which is aware. And all of these other things are coming and going in you. So then when you really accept this, when you really truly recognize this, which is not hard, you can do it now. You don't have to wait. You can just accept that, just see it and just tell the truth about it now. Yes, that is who I am. It's crystal clear. It's perfectly obvious. Yes, that's who I am. Everything else changes. The body changes, the mind changes, the preferences change. Everything changes. But notice that you, who you know yourself to be, without having to think about it, just who you actually know yourself to be, has never changed. You have never changed. You're changeless. But everything else is changing. Your thoughts, your opinions, your preferences, all of that changes. So you know that you are that. You've always known that you're that. And you can accept that now. Then it's, of course, valuable as needed to utilize any formal process that helps you in returning to that clarity. So make use of the formal process of inquiry or any kind of meditation process or yogic process or whatever process is valuable to you in that. But for that, not just to achieve a state. Because as you see, the states come and go, but to bring you to that clarity for yourself of who you are. The more that you do that, then the more you can start to realize that you don't need the techniques. So the techniques are fine. I'm saying that again, just to be really clear about it. I'm not saying the techniques are bad in any way, or that you should evolve beyond the techniques, or that you're lesser than or weak because you rely on the technique. The techniques are fine, but then start to see, as you repeatedly have these glimpses, these recognitions of this clarity of yourself as that which is prior to, during, and after all states, then start to bring that inquiry into everything so that the inquiry is alive rather than you having to use the inquiry to go to a state. Rather, that inquiry comes alive in all states. So that in the agitation, in the upset, in the despair, in the depression, in the anger, in the self-judgment, in the self-hatred, in the all of it, that inquiry becomes alive. And what does that mean? It means simply that it points you to yourself so that you recognize who is aware. Who am I now? Who is here? Who is present? Who is aware of this? And is that harmed by the state? So that moment to moment, what happens is that there's a clear recognition that I am that unchanging, unaffected, unharmed, pure awareness that cannot be augmented nor diminished by any state, so that no state tarnishes me, no state diminishes me, no state affects me. And you have to see that It can't just be a thought. It has to be directly seen. But you can start to see that moment to moment. So that's the true living inquiry. And the reason this is so important is because otherwise what happens is we still keep thinking that we have to produce a particular state, and that state is our goal. Because we keep using the technique to get to a state, and that's in that state we have this recognition, and then we conflate the state and the recognition, which is easy to do because the state can be very nice if we can produce a nice state, which we do initially because it calms things enough, things settle enough that we can see clearly. When we can recognize, okay, the world has disappeared, the body has disappeared, the mind has disappeared, all the agitation has disappeared. There's just perfect stillness. There's no one separate from the stillness, and I am. Then this dawning recognition occurs. Oh, I'm none of those things that I thought I was. I am this. I am here. I am this aliveness. I am this awareness. I am this pure light. It's experiential, it's direct, it's not conceptual. And so we repeat that over and over, and it gets clearer and clearer, hopefully. But what can also happen is that we can repeat it over and over because we're still conflating the recognition with the state, and we keep thinking, oh, this state, I need the state for the recognition. This recognition is only there when the state is there. I need that state all the time because I need the recognition all the time. And then we become very distraught because we can't seem to maintain that state all the time. And you can't. I mean, even those who are able to do so somewhat, I mean, you can relatively have success with that using, as I've said, advanced yogic techniques. But those are only for yogis. And what does that mean? I mean, that means, and I'm using, yogi, the term yogi, I mean, it's not specific to a culture. I mean, there are yogis, the way I'm using the term, in all cultures, in all time, but they're the ones who they retreat from society because you can't live in this world and be engaged in society and maintain those states, because this society is you just know you just see what there's a lot of violence, a lot of conflict, a lot of disharmony. It's a lot of up and down. So it's a mistake for us to try and sustain those states. And instead, we are called, and it's our place in this world to bring that awareness, that recognition into all states. And the power of that is that it is the one source. You see this in your own direct experience. If you just are observing, you just see that all of creation is springing forth from this silence, this pure light that you are. You just watch it in your own experience. It all vanishes. I mean, just like in deep sleep, you see, in deep sleep, everything disappears, the world disappears, you disappear, everything disappears. And that same thing is happening now, infinitely, eternally, because all of creation is occurring. There's creation and dissolution happening now. So we are actually called to bring that recognition into the level of creation rather than retreating from creation. And that means you are the you are that point at which everything is, the creation and the dissolution is occurring. So that dissolution, if you say, well, all this violence, all of this anger, all of this judgment, all of this hatred, all of this so-called undesirable stuff, it needs to be dissolved. Well, how is that going to happen? If not by means of consciousness now. And the fact that it appears in consciousness, you now, is the miracle happening. And all we need to do is just allow that function to complete without interference. So you just don't need to judge it. You don't need to judge the judgment. You don't need to react to the reaction. You just can notice, have that realization now, that recognition that I am that pure consciousness in which this is occurring. How do I know that? Because I'm aware. And that awareness is untouched, unaffected. That awareness remains pure consciousness, regardless of what is appearing. And so you put it into practice, and you see, and many of you, I know you are doing that, and you are seeing the result of it. But you will see more and more that just as I've said, that you'll recognize increasingly that I am unharmed by what I am aware of. And so this kind of fearlessness continues to blossom, and you will see that far from life being this miserable, painful, and endless torment that we've been led to believe, that it's wide open. It's wide open right now in your own experience. So I'll end this recording momentarily, and for those who are here live, we can stay on for the Q&A. Okay.